Welcome back to the Auld Triangle, episode 60. We're here, Andy Stevenson, Caoilte Barra, and myself, Ian O'Neill, to talk you through all the latest news in Irish mixed martial arts. Bellator Dublin in the books. Ian Garry's fight right around the corner. Conor McGregor's fight off altogether. We're getting tucked in to all of those details. Obviously, big cards on the domestic scenes, Premier FC, Virtus as well. We're ready to talk about all of that. Andy Stevenson flew all the way from Zanzibar to get to Bellator Dublin last night in the 3 Arena, and only ended up talking to one of the biggest stars in the mixed martial arts and in the world right now, in Conor McGregor. We'll hear all about that in just a few moments. Andy, before we get into the nitty-gritty of last night, hope you had a fantastic honeymoon, a fantastic trip. The fans of the Auld Triangle did hardly even know. You're only missing for a 15-minute segment there at the end of the last episode. We kept it fairly tight. But we're glad to have you back and hope you had a good time over there.
As I said in the last episode, I made the podcast better by leaving.
Not too sure about that, but we're definitely glad to have you back. It was a good crack over there. I always wanted to go on a safari and hope to get the chance to do it soon. And I'm sure it was good crack. You were eyeing up a few lions and brilliant over there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Like you're in a fucking car and there's a line. We were driving at one point, like a lot of the time, like there was one time we saw lions, but like there was literally, like I say, 10 or 15 jeeps all surrounding it. So it's a bit weird, like where you're like, this is a natural habitat, but like I'd say it's a bit odd where you've got like fucking 15 cars just surrounding these things. And it was the same when we saw the cheetahs, but there was one time we were driving and it was like in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden I kind of look at the window and I was like to the driver, pretty sure that's a lion right there. And he's like, oh, geez, a good spot or whatever. And like just a male lion just having a little nap. And then he got up and then we saw like a load of cubs and like the lionesses then like 10 minutes later, like just down the road. So yeah, it was mad, like absolutely mad trip, but good to be back. No tan. Well, maybe like I
don't know about that. You got a little bit
as tanned as I get. So
you got a bit of that Paul Hughes glow on you now, I gotta say. So
yeah, without the sunbeds.
Yeah, Caoilte, I know I can speak for myself saying that I haven't had as an exciting last 2 weeks as Andy Stevenson. What about yourself? Any action? I know you've been in the midst of a move to a new location now and everything. I know that has its own headaches.
Headaches is a different story. New place for recording. It's very, yeah, I think I would have rather be on a safari, to be honest with you. The risk of lions is better than moving boxes from A to B for the course of a few days. So, look, we're all settled now and we have Andy back. So the trio are back and I'm delighted to have you back, Andy.
Great to be back.
Yeah, indeed. Let's talk Bellator Dublin. Obviously, Andy, you flew straight from Zanzibar, obviously, to the 3 Arena last night. What was that trip like? Did you get any kind of did you literally get straight off the plane and go straight to the 3 Arena? Did you get any downtime at all in your home place at all, or what was it like?
I wouldn't say any downtime. It was it was mad. Like, got up on Friday at like 9 o'clock. So we were there like at the resort or whatever for the full day. Left there at like 5 o'clock Irish time. Went to the airport. Almost fucking died on the way to the airport, by the way, because some lad, like, there's no street lights. Your man hit a bump that he didn't see. We almost went airborne, and I was asleep in the car. And I wake up to Michaela, like, grab my arm, and I'm like, "Are we dying? Right? Are we in a car crash?" Got to the airport. And then it was like, I think 17 hours travel. I probably slept maybe 3 hours, 4 hours max, if even, across the 2 flights. And then it was get off the flight. My dad kindly collected us from the airport, dropped us home. I jumped in the shower, charged up my stuff for the cameras and things like that, and then straight into 3 Arena. What witnessed the seagull steal a Mars bar from the Spar right beside 3 Arena. That might have been the highlight of my day, actually.
It probably was the highlight of your social media activity for me last night. He was having a whale of a time. There's nothing as bad as getting absolutely woken up in a worry or a panic. I just, when you said that, I kind of reminded one. I was on a work trip there not so long ago, and I was flying back home to Saskatoon, I think from Winnipeg or wherever it was, but I had my earphones on and I was listening. I'll tell you exactly the podcast I was listening to. I was listening to the Blind Boy podcast, and you know, he had, like, I like listening to that when you're relaxing. He's a nice subtle tone and it's nice and relaxing. He was recording in a hotel room, and the fire alarm in the hotel room started going off, and I was asleep listening to the podcast, and next thing the fire alarm started going off in my ears, and we were up in the air, so I thought it was the alarm on the plane. and I shot up onto the seat like that. I was looking around. I'd say anyone who was sitting beside me or across from me thought I was a fucking lunatic. But gladly it was only the alarm on the fucking on the podcast. But plenty of alarms were raised last night anyway when Conor McGregor walked into the building for the Bellator show. It was kind of took up the bulk of the headlines. But in other big news, Paul Hughes got the win in the co-main event over Bobby King. We also had wins for all the Kellys on the card as well. Nathan Kelly, Nate the Great Kelly, and Derek Kelly. And unfortunately, Paul Nolan was obviously defeated to Nate the Great, and Sinead Kavanagh picked up losses. Obviously, Sinead lost to Arlene Blenka. We'll get into all of that as well. Caoilte, your overall thoughts on the card first before we get into the nitty-gritty of the fights. What was it like for you watching on screen? You know, Andy, we'll get Andy's live in action kind of experience in just a minute, but you know, it kind of felt like Bellator Dublin / the Conor McGregor show last night watching along, because like it did not miss anything. Like, it was ridiculous in kind of certain ways, but you know, understandable in others. But yeah, that's what it kind of felt like for me. It was a surprise to see him in there. Obviously, you know, Conor and Sinead Kavanagh, you know, a surprise, but great to see him in there. And you know, what was it like for you watching on the TV?
Yeah, they weren't half happy to have him there anyway. Like, you know, might as well have rolled out the red carpet, really. But overall, looking at the show, the actual card I enjoyed. I think we said it many times before. I would have loved a few more Irish fighters in the card. I feel like they could have stacked it a little bit more. The fights that were on it was decent card, solid. But yeah, like, I think having Conor McGregor there really kind of took the limelight for a lot of it. Like, even when he's in the corner for Sinead, he had a camera, like they had a Conor camera the entire time. And there's moments I'm like, I don't really need to be having him there in the left-hand corner of my screen. I want to watch the fights. You know, it's like, there's no need for it. There's a few things I felt like I kind of cringed a little at times. There was that moment.
Wait. So was he's the entire time? It was constant.
The entire time. Constant.
Like Andy, like all the time.
Was
like
overkill.
So it's just like a live camera on.
Yeah, we're gonna we'll only talk about obviously the Irish fighters, but for the entire main event between Jason Jackson and Karamidov, or whatever his name is, they had a camera on Conor, like, and he had no he had no kind of dog in the fight at all. Like, I mean, it was so weird. It was overkill, and that's not Conor's fault. That's just like a decision that the broadcast made. But I've seen them do this before too, with the likes of John Jones, and when he's turned up at a couple of events as well, and they seem to spoon over the UFC stars as much as they can, at the cost of taking some of the spotlight off of some of their own stars, which is, I find, a little bit weird. But, you know, Conor McGregor is such a big, imposing figure as well. But, you know, it wasn't all, I guess, shown on him. You know, Paul Hughes had a lovely moment with him after his fight as well. It was great to see him out there in the corner for Sinead, you know, as well, obviously supporting his teammates. And but yeah, my goodness, Bellator milked the absolute shit out of it. Andy, you were live there in attendance. Was it known that Conor was going to be there? Did it come as a shock to you as it did to us?
So it wasn't initially known. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'd mind me saying. So obviously, the Homer Simpson, as Sean put it on Twitter last night, the Homer Simpson of Irish MMA media, Graham McDonald, he got word that you know, Conor was coming, and Bellator and PFL, Bellator and PFL were obviously tipped off. So I think it was a bit of a shock to the promotion that he was coming. So then it was kind of everyone at battle stations to figure out how to approach it, etc. And then obviously he was in the corner. So kind of got word before he was arriving that he was en route. But yeah, from there it was the Conor McGregor show for a lot of the card. Not you know, he was straight into go mode when he arrived. He was looking for Sinead, looking to be in the corner. Obviously went back with her, and then afterwards, I stayed for the rest of the show. I thought it was brilliant to see, you know, the interactions between himself and Paul. Actually, funny, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but the way it worked out was Sinead had fought, Conor went back with her, and we were trying to figure out, you know, can we make an interview happen essentially. So then what happened was, I was kind of, as Paul Hughes was walking, they did that grace walk, we were kind of like out of shot, we were behind the cameras, like outside. So we, like, it was a tough call. We're like, do we go in and watch Paul, or are we going to get an interview with Conor McGregor here? So we stayed, and there was a monitor in the back, so we ended up actually watching a bit of the Hughes fight with McGregor, and seeing him kind of react to it and all this stuff. So yeah, it was mad. It was mad. I'm sorry, I'm probably jumping ahead a bit here, so I'll leave it there.
No, totally fine, totally fine. Let's get into the card. Obviously, look, we kind of given out about Bellator for kind of talking about Conor McGregor. Yeah. We've done the same, but like, I mean, look, it's hard not to talk about. Let's talk about the fights first. We'll go back to Conor then, and let's start at the co-main event: Paul Hughes versus Bobby King. A good. Like, I was trying to describe this fight, and I think he described it best himself. A good test and a much needed test for Paul as well. And it's like, you know, I think people may be guilty of saying, like, you know, obviously, oh, he went out and he got hit and he might have got dropped in the first round and dropped the first round. But in order for Paul Hughes to get better, he needs rounds like that. He cannot just be going out and smoking guys in round one and knocking guys out in round one, because you're not going to learn anything about yourself. In order to get better, you need to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you do end up getting better. So I thought what really we should be concentrating on, obviously we have to talk about round one as well, is the fact that, you know, how well he came back and the adjustments that he made in round two. And he absolutely bludgeoned Bobby King with elbows to get the TKO. Finished. Caoilte, looking at the fight as well from a technical standpoint, how did you assess Paul Hughes' performance?
Yeah, like as you mentioned, the adjustments for me are what are key and what are the things to narrow in on, because I feel like a lot of people will look at the first round and the exchanges in the striking and be very critical of Paul Hughes and maybe try and derail the hype train, as a lot of, I guess, general MMA fandom can happen. A lot of, like, there's going to be a lot of lessons in that first round and it's a very good test. You know, Bobby King was landing and he found his range. He was landing some good shots. Paul was getting in there as well, but I would have given the first round to Bobby King. And that at that point, you could tell there was a change was needed. And the second round was telling then, when Paul made the decision to take it down. But there was a level of ferocity about kind of Paul Hughes as well, when he was throwing that ground and pound and kind of hunting the finish, in a sense, to really get Bobby King out of there. And then as the stoppage came, what I thought was perfectly fine stoppage. He was dusting him up on the ground with those elbows. It was a really clinical kind of ending to the fight. And it was good to see, because we don't want to see one of the upcoming prospects just running through lads. We want to see him tested. We want to see him kind of reaching new levels. But yeah, good test. I think keeps him in good stead for what's ahead at Bellator, PFL, and hopefully get one more in maybe before the end of the year, before he enters that $1 million tournament. I think that might be a good shout.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Andy, obviously being there, getting to witness the walkout and everything like that, not, you know, kind of getting the chance to look at the fight with Conor, as you said as well, a different kind of experience than what we had. There's nobody that enjoys a walkout more, I don't think, than Paul Hughes, really. When you hear Grace and then coming into Nipsey Hussle, it's really, he's really made that as his own. And I obviously, you know, I really enjoy that. It's part of a Paul Hughes fight now, really, isn't it, Andy?
Yeah, like it makes it more of a moment. And I'm really, really glad that Bellator went with it and gave him kind of the grand entrance, you know, filming him from the back, letting it be a long walkout. You know, it's not, even when he got onto the stage, it wasn't just right straight into the cage. He was taking his time. He put on his own little mini rap performance as he walked down the ramp. But I thought it was a good spectacle and fitting, especially for, you know, I definitely criticize Bellator a lot over the years for various different things, but I think that they've done a brilliant job so far with promoting Paul Hughes, the videos that they were putting out of him in Ballymun Kickums, you know, just kind of representing his identity and helping him to connect not just with the US and the global audience, but also, you know, further strengthen his connection with the Irish fans, which, you know, we've been critical about with Ian Garry over the last number of kind of months or almost years at this point. So I think they hit the nail on the head with everything they did in the lead up, and I think similarly with the entrance, it was spot on.
Yeah, indeed. And your opinions on the performance itself, Andy? Look at it, like, you know, Paul said people are going to be licking their lips after that. He said it wasn't his best performance. You know, he was also giving Bobby King the credit that he deserved, and you know, didn't get a lot of, you know, was kind of vocal about some people kind of snuffing at Bobby King over an opponent, but we saw how dangerous he was, how much problems that he could cause as well. But at the same time, we also saw how good Paul Hughes was to overcome those issues and like Caoilte said, turn it around in round 2 and get the job done in the end.
Yeah, and like, so just to give kind of, I guess, full context or full disclosure, so on the night I didn't get to see like half of the fight, so I was kind of, as we're doing the media scrum at the end, I was leaning on you lads and in the Severe group to be like, right, you know, what happened here, because I need to be able to ask the right questions or whatever. When I went back and watched today, and I don't know if it's more that I was kind of surprised, I was expecting it to be a lot more of a clear cut Bobby King round when I was watching it back, just from kind of hearing, and I was very impressed with how Paul rebounded. Like, now obviously, like early on he kind of stifled King with the low kick, and it was then shortly after that, I think it was, when he got dropped with that jab, and he was definitely getting touched up. Like when they were exchanging in the pocket, King was landing some solid shots, but I was really impressed by how Paul rebounded from there. Like, I thought he was using his low kicks quite well. I think he landed a head kick at one point, maybe. I can't remember if that was the first or the second round. So like, again, I don't know if I probably need to watch it again, but like, I wouldn't even think it's crazy if you gave, but despite getting drops, if you gave Paul that round. Now, I wouldn't argue at all.
I think the fact that he did kind of get stunted, and look at he won't, like, I wouldn't say that there's different ways that you can get stunned. You can get your bell rang, you can get kind of, you know, disorientated. I think Paul described it excellently, is that he stepped onto the jab of Bobby King, and I think his forward movement kind of helped the ferocity of that punch. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at that, he was sat down. He was sat down, and for me,
fair.
Yeah, and no, I definitely get your argument too. And when we say that he lost round 1, by no means it was a landslide win by Bobby King at all. I would score to Bobby King for that exchange. I know the calf kicks that he was landing were excellent as well, that Paul Hughes, but he was getting clipped on the exit of some of the other exchanges as well. But I think the defining moment of that round, you know, was that Bobby King jab that sat Paul Hughes down. Whether it was he was a little bit off balance or whatever, caught by surprise, he still was sat down by it. So that's how I would justify that. But I think, you know, to come back from that, and I think he acknowledged that, you know, it was a close round himself. The second round was by no means close at all, in the slightest, and that was great to see from Paul.
Yeah, and like it reminded me, not like for like, but remember the Ian Garry fight versus Keenan Song, where he got hurt early or dropped early, and then he was able to make the like, what I find incredibly impressive about a fighter is when they can make adjustments real time. It's, you know, the whole like win or learn thing. It's like when you can face some adversity, but then in the cage as it's happening, make the adjustments to not get caught with that again, and to kick on. I think that's so impressive, and I think that's what Paul did as well in this fight, where he just came out, like, obviously, you know, King, I think Caoilte on the broadcast was kind of pointing out, you know, King might maybe limping back a little bit, and their demeanors as they entered the second, where Paul was like, no, I'm ready to go here now. You know, my face is bloody, there's blood kind of trickling out of my nose, but I'm standing here and I'm ready to kick on into the next gear. And that's what he did. And once he got that, I think it was the body lock takedown maybe, once the elbow started coming out, it was kind of all she wrote. But like, yeah, it was a ferocious finish in the end for Hughes, and especially when you get dropped. And I think had he gone to decision, we could be having a different conversation here, where it's like, you know, all the hype leading up into this, did he deliver? But the fact that he went out there and got such a ferocious finish, I think he absolutely did.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a bigger test for him. I wasn't by any means kind of labeling Bobby King a bum or anything like that. But I did think, you know, from what we have seen from Paul Hughes, he did have that level of ability to get a guy like Bobby King out of there. So I think it's a win that might not be highly regarded as much as it should be because of the naysayers maybe before the fight. But Bobby King is a tough guy. I know he lost his last 2 fights, but, you know, we've seen how tough he was there. You know, that's the, you know, Paul Hughes was on the back foot a little bit more than we've ever seen him, to be honest, probably since the first Vucenic fight, if we're being honest. So, I mean, it was massively impressive from Bobby King to draw that level of performance out of Paul Hughes too, Caoilte, at the same time. You know, hammering with elbows, getting the finish. My initial thought after the fight is that, you know, we're not going to be able to see Paul Hughes finish guys like this in the PFL in the regular season tournament, and it's a bit of a crying shame, isn't it?
But what's the question of should they allow elbows in the
back
tournament?
in? That's what I say. Get those fucking elbows back in. Let's fucking fight for real.
Here's the thing: like in tournament format, I get it, cuts, etc., etc. Back in the day when we had Pride, they didn't give a bollocks. They were like, do what you want. Elbow, you could kick to the head back then, I'm pretty sure as well. It's, just allow elbows. I think taking that tool away from fighters in tournaments is, I don't know, it's not detrimental, but it's annoying for fans. It's annoying for them. So I can't imagine what it must feel like for some of them to be like, let's say in a half guard or full mount position and posting up and just wanting to rain down an elbow. It must be very frustrating. So, just let him use it. But yeah, we won't get to see those again from the looks of things. But either way, I think his ground and pound was still pretty ferocious. That he'd get on pretty all right as well if it did go to the ground in the tournament.
Yeah, for sure. Like even like some of his elbows from the standing position too are phenomenal. That Paul Hughes uses. Paul Hughes uses. Paul Hughes on the feet. But yeah, no, I just hope that rule is changed soon. I know there's been a lot of pressure on Dan Hardy and stuff like that. You can understand. Look at with the tournament setting, quick turnarounds. But fighters are falling out of these tournaments anyway. So I mean, you don't want to get caught with an elbow. Don't put yourself into a position to get caught with an elbow. That's what I say. But you spoke
Hardy. Dan Hardy, I think, was saying to my memory's failing me here now, but someone asked him in the media scrum after about elbows, and I think what he was saying is he's pushing for this. He wants to bring them in. So
yeah,
look, hopefully that'll be the case.
You spoke with Paul after the fight, Andy, backstage, obviously. What were the feels of that interview? You could tell that he knew that round one was close, but, a good performance. He stated we've not seen nothing yet. And I believe that statement too.
Yeah, I mean, the big takeaway as far as the performance itself and coming through that, getting dropped, was he was highlighting the fact that he was too wild and he got a little bit too, he was kind of saying, I felt that I was kind of anytime I touch someone now, because I've come off the back of 2 knockouts, that they're just going to go down. And then he was touching Bobby King and he was standing there looking at him straight in the face, being like, right, that all you got? Like, come on, we keep going. So he acknowledged that he got a little bit trigger happy and left himself exposed. I think when he was chatting to Paul Brown at the start of the scrum. But really, what he's pushing for is, look, he's here and he's ready for the big fights. We will remember that he was teasing this call out that was going to come in the cage. It didn't come, and I believe it was Usman Nurmagomedov, who I think he's just been booked there recently, has he?
Yeah, correct. He's been booked for the Bellator card that will be taking place in San Diego or something like that. I seen
right.
Like literally only was announced Thursday, Friday of last week.
So Hughes, as a result, shelved his call out because he's like, right, well, that's not on the table anymore. So clearly that gives us an indication of where he's looking to go immediately, which is right into the mix, right into the very top. He's looking for, he was talking about, he wants another belt. He'd like to get the Bellator belt before going into this tournament. Will that happen? I think that's probably just logistically, given the current matchmaking, etc., might not be likely. So it'd be very interesting to see what he does. He's obviously pushing for a Belfast show and was pushing, to kind of get more teammates and stuff on like that. But again, I think that their schedule is pretty set out for the rest of the year. So I'm sure we will see him again in 2024. Against who will be, I guess, a very intriguing question, because
who do you want? Who would you like to see?
Oh God, Jesus, put me on the spot.
I have an idea straight from
I've known that comes to mind, but I'm open to I'm all ears.
I'd like to see him take on somebody like Patricky Pitbull or something like that. Give him a legend. Yeah, give Patricky Pitbull fought on the PFL card last Thursday. Did he get the win? I'm not too sure. He might be tied up in the tournament himself.
Doesn't even really matter though, does it? If he got the win?
No, but actually he lost. So he lost the split decision. So he's out of the tournament. So you have the championship fight that's going on in the States. You could just throw him and Paul as a showcase fight, the non-tournament fight. I think the vet, obviously, look at Bobby King is kind of somewhat of a veteran, maybe, but I think a true veteran's test now for Paul Hughes is what I'd like to see. And I think Patricky Pitbull and him match up excellently well. It might not be it might not be all sunshine and rainbows for Paul taking that fight, because he is coming off the back of a couple of losses, but still it would be a great test in you know, the career trajectory of Paul Hughes. Would you agree, Caoilte, or would you like to see somebody else? I mean, you got a bunch of names here. I mean,
I have a left of field one.
Go ahead.
Left of field one. From my understanding, so PFL, Bellator, they're going to go back to France eventually this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. But if they are, I'd love to see him, Paul, be full healed, be the villain in the fight, and fight someone like Mansour I can't say his name, Barnois,
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
Barnois,
yeah. Thank you. Who he won on the Champion Series card, was it last month, I believe. I would love that fight. That is two lads, top-notch fighters, two really good lightweights, and I think that'd be one for the European fans to get excited about.
Yeah, you got the likes of Benson Henderson knocking around flyweight or lightweight there as well. I mean, you know, Clay Collard is another guy. I mean, yeah, you could, you know, put him in there. You know, if you want to showcase him now for the next season that you're going to have him in, you know, in my opinion, putting him on a PFL card, you know, they've done it before where they just have a non-tournament fight on whether the prelims or the main card or whatever they want to do with Paul. But, you know, with that level of trajectory, that's where Paul is looking. So that's kind of where I'm basing my matchups off of. Like, but there's plenty of exciting matchups there for Paul. You know, you can have a big main event. You could put him in there against anybody, Andy, really, in Belfast and do a massive Belfast card, even maybe at the end of this year or the very start of next year either as well.
Oh, 100%. I would love to see that. I think maybe like if you could get Paul out twice more before the tournament, like if you could get him one more fight on either, say like that, if it's Bellator, the London card or the Paris card, and then if you could get a Belfast card like right before, you know, maybe 3 months before he heads into next year's tournament, that'd be absolutely brilliant. But I think, yeah, like I think that look, coming in here, you'll have people look at that fight against Bobby King. You'll see he got dropped early, and there will be some questions at least. And like I asked him this, and he acknowledged it. He reckons there will be other opponents licking his lips. So I think it'd be great to see Paul. We've seen him against a guy, you know, a tenured fighter who's not well known. Let's see him against someone that we know, like just so that the US audience maybe can get a gauge of, you know, what should they be expecting from Paul Hughes? What does he look like against someone who they're familiar with?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think we're all along the same lines there as I lose one of my earbuds here, but I'll keep her going. Yeah, I think that's I think look at the future is bright for Paul Hughes. I think we need to get him in there with a couple of names too, especially before that tournament. And I hope that, you know, PFL/Bellator can make it happen. I think that Belfast show makes itself, and it'll be very, very exciting to see what happens next for Paul Hughes. Let's talk a little bit about Sinead Kavanagh's fight with Arlene Blencowe, a fight that started really well for Sinead. You know, she was light on her feet. She looked in fantastic shape. She looked locked in on fight week. Started the fight excellently. Was winning the entire first round, in my opinion. You know, and then, you know, Blencowe unleashed the overhand right, kind of dropped Sinead towards the end of the round, which could have kind of teetered the round back to Arlene Blencowe. And that was kind of the story of the fight. Was maybe a little bit of doubt in Sinead's mind of, you know, exchanging in the pocket. You know, a little bit more tentative, obviously, you know, going into round two. And same deal again, got hurt on the feet again. And Blencowe went and locked in the choke and got the finish. Disappointing night again for Sinead. You know, she looked at this as a big fight, as a Caoilte, as a one that, you know, a win could have got her back into title contention, but it wasn't to be for Sinead on the night, unfortunately.
No, it wasn't. And like, as you mentioned, you know, she started so strong. She went into that. She was active from the very beginning. She was working off the jab really early. She was engaging a lot as well, like setting up her shots with feints. And I just felt like she looked really confident in there with the striking, and she looked a lot looser than Arlene Blencowe did. Like, Blencowe looked very stiff, I thought, for that first round until she landed that big shot to drop Sinead. And even when Sinead started working in those leg kicks halfway through the first, I thought, okay, this is looking like Sinead could run through her here. And one shot can change a fight, really, and kind of change the pace of the fight. And that's kind of what happened to that first round near the end, and could potentially have won Arlene the round. Ultimately, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because in the second round, like we saw Sinead kind of picked up where she left off, where, you know, she started really strong again. And the power is from Blanco, and the timing of those punches really were the difference. And yeah, caught Sinead lovely with them, and managed to get the guillotine in after that then. And yeah, it's a shame, because I was really hoping we could set up the Liam McCourt fight again after that fight. If Sinead was to get the win, I imagine Bellator would have loved to do, or PFL would have loved to have done that as well. But just wasn't her night. But from a performance showing, despite the loss, actually looked really good in there as well. You know, it was a tough one.
Yeah, it's just a cruel reality of mixed martial arts, really. Things can be going so well for you, Andy, and then suddenly, you know, one shot changes a lot of things. And, you know, it was the story of this fight too, really. What was it like from your perspective watching live?
Yeah, I mean, like, Sinead got a good pop. Obviously, the crowd there wasn't the best crowd that they've ever had there. It was, you know, less people, and it was very, very quiet at times. But when the Irish fighters were on, the crowd found their voice, and it was no different for Sinead. I thought she looked brilliant in the first round up until she got dropped. Like, I thought, obviously, like, she knew coming into this that she's fought Blanco before. She knows that she's got power. That was the kind of the big threat that she identified, that she hits hard. And we saw even early on when Sinead was having success, and a lot of success, Blanco did land some hard shots, but I thought that Sinead did a brilliant job of establishing her range and kind of dictating the pace of the fight. And also, you know, where we've seen Sinead many, many times fighting off the back foot and on the outside, and maybe not with the big kind of power shots, she was landing some heavy shots early on in the first, and taking the center of the cage as well. So yeah, look, that'll be a tough loss for her to take. But, like, I mean, Blanco in her Bellator run, she's only ever lost to really, really high caliber opponent. Like, it's Cyborg, Sarah McMahon, Julia Budd. I think they're the only three. Maybe Marius Conan early on, or I can't remember. But, like, it'll be a tough loss to take. But in that division, I think you're only ever really a couple of wins away from being right back up there at the top. And to be honest, like, I know you're saying, Chris, about, like, had she won setting up a Liam McCourt fight, I think that fight is there, especially because Sinead has the win over her. I think that's there whenever they want it. Now, ideally, you'd like it maybe when they're both coming off a win, and it'd be interesting to see what happens with Leah. Like, I think there was talk to her. I have been a bit out of the loop, obviously, but, like, I think there was talks of her going in against Pacheco. Did I see that?
Yeah, the Cyborg Pacheco fight was announced. Well, not announced, but, like,
changes every day, doesn't it?
Yeah, heavy rumors. But now what the word is that it will be Liam McCourt versus Pacheco as well. So don't know what's going on there with that situation. But yeah, nothing has been officially announced, but they're more leaning on Liam Pacheco now, rather than going with Cyborg and Pacheco. So, like, there must be some stuff going on with Cyborg and that promotion that's been fairly bumpy road with that relationship. Yeah, indeed.
Well, like, even if Leah comes and gets the title, like, all Sinead has to start doing is chirping and saying, I'm the Queen of Ireland.
Leah will want to get that. Leah will want to get that win back, or get the opportunity to get that win back. And obviously, you know, if there's a title involved, Sinead would take that with two hands, I would imagine. Moving on down, guys. Dara Kelly, back at lightweight, back getting first round finishes here. Fantastic performance, Caoilte, from the Donegal man. What I was so happy to see is actually something that stood out to me last night in the whole lot, looking at the post-fight interviews and everything like that, was how much more back to himself Dara Kelly kind of looked in levels of performance, but also after the fight as well, when he was speaking about it. You know, obviously very disappointed with these last couple of performances, even though he did get the win. And, you know, the flirtation of moving down to featherweight is not really one that he has said that suited him. So the decision was to move back up. But Caoilte looked so much more himself last night. Was very happy after a win, and so he should be as well. It was an excellent finish, the guillotine choke, which put Mateus Porion to sleep in the very first round.
Yeah, he ran through him. Like, it's, and as you mentioned, back to those performances that we've all kind of been, I guess we missed really. And it's nice to see him back at lightweight. I think I remember before when he was initially gone down to featherweight, I couldn't believe, I think probably the rest of you guys probably agree, couldn't believe how he could make featherweight. Like, the amount of stress he's probably putting his body under. And I feel like looking back on those performances now, how maybe that weight cut could have affected them compared to this one now, where he looks very natural lightweight. He looks like he suits the division perfectly, and the performance matched it. That's probably one of his toughest opponents today. He just went sliced through him like butter, got the submission, and one-way traffic. And it's hopefully gives him a good push for another fight somewhere else this year. I really like that performance from Dara, and even though, as you mentioned, the way he was on the mic afterwards, it was good to see. Now I was really happy with that one.
Yeah, I was looking for the terminology, and I think, Andy, the perfect terminology would be he got his mojo back last night. I think Dara Kelly didn't he? And it kind of seemed that way with the performance and with the post-fight interview as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bruiser, isn't he? Like, he's just,
He's an animal. Like when you see the size of him at lightweight there last night, you're thinking, huge. How did he get down to featherweight? Like, you know, and obviously he spoke about not in too much details, but you know how much of a struggle and how much it did take it out of him, and it just goes to prove, like, you know, weight cutting isn't always the option, Andy. Eh?
Exactly. And look, there's been no bigger fans of Dara Kelly's lats than the El Triangle podcast. So I mean, like, he looked huge as always. But I do think that I think he's talking 155 is his home, and I'm glad, because it seemed to me every single time like Dara Kelly would go in, he'd get a win over an opponent. Some, you know, mostly finishes. I think he's been to decision once. And it seemed that every single time he'd be beating himself up after it. He'd be finding fault in something. And I think that that's probably what fed into the move to featherweight, is just he's hypercritical of himself. So he went in here, and I know both he and, because he must have been saying it to Dan Hardy as well, both were remarking that he wanted to go in here and show his hands. And in the end, he presented himself, you know, to use his grappling, and what a choke in the end, putting him completely unconscious. But I think he should stay at lightweight, which he intends to do. So look, I think for Dara, really, we focus a lot on the progression. Like, we focus a lot on like the progression of matchmaking and things like that. For Dara Kelly, I just think activity. I just think he needs to be getting out there, fighting 3-4 times over the next 12 months, and whoever, just keep fighting, and that experience in the cage will allow him to finally find that flow state that he is looking for. I don't think he's doing anything wrong that he needs to find this, but he's always critical of himself. So that'll come with more experience in the cage. And as I think of Nathan Kelly, who we will get to, you know, that again, like, as I kind of maybe look back on the matchmaking that we've all called for, like, he needs a tougher test, which is true. But also, like, that run that he's on now of 11 fights is phenomenal for him, and phenomenal for his career, and is building a real momentum behind him. And I think that similarly for Dara Kelly, that could be the case, you know, in say 18 months' time.
100%. Yeah, very well said. Rumor has it that each of Dara Kelly's lats weighs about 35 pounds each. So, no, I'm very glad to see him back at lightweight, winning fights. And I could not agree with any, like, I could not even add anything to what you said, Andy. Activity needs to be. We've got a card in London. We've got a card in France. Let's get him on those cards as well. You mentioned Nathan Kelly. He picked up another fantastic win over Jose Sanchez, who missed weight heading into this, second fighter in a row that has missed weight. You know, it wasn't a roadblock for Nathan Kelly. Went out there, performed very well, locking in a ninja choke in the very first round. Caoilte, 9 finishes out of 11 wins, on a multi-fight win streak right now. Phenomenal stuff from Nathan Kelly. And, you know, whilst I do agree what Andy was saying about, you know, levels of activity and wanting to see him better test, I think we absolutely are certainly at that level now with Nathan Kelly in terms of steps up in competitions. Caoilte,
100%. He showed that last night. You know, it was brilliant performance, and that he showed he was levels above your man, that Sanchez that came in against him. It's mad now, because I look at the Nathan Kelly situation. I'm glad that they bumped up the card, because originally I was looking at that thinking, this is a guy you had headlining recently, and now you have him nearly, was it opening the card, if I remember correctly. But now it's I was glad to see him bumped up. I feel like he should be on the main card. I know for some fighters card placement doesn't matter, but from an audience perspective, when there might be more people come to the arena, I feel like he would have deserved that pop. On a quick side note, Andy, you'll probably be able to talk about this a bit further, but walking out to Crazy World was, I can't even imagine what that was like in the arena and what that moment was like for him, because obviously he's from Finglas, and then Christy Dignam, the late Christy Dignam of Aslan, was also from Finglas, and that song's like, it's amazing for for everyone in Ireland, it's loved by all. So I imagine that was an amazing moment as well. But what a performance! It's I do feel like time for a step up for Nathan Kelly and to be given that extra bit of push now. And there'd be no better man, in my opinion, to give him next than a lad who shared the card. And that was Magomed Sharipov.
Yeah, 100%. Andy, would you agree? I would assume that you would.
Yeah, I'd watch the shit out of that.
Yeah,
yeah, and you're right, Quitch. Like, I feel like Nathan connects. He just, fans connect with Nathan Kelly. There's an authenticity about him. I think that his fights in 3 Arena, and I completely agree about the card place, just bizarre. But look, I 100% agree. I'd love to see him tested next. I know he's calling for this $1 million tournament. I would love to see him get that. Dan Hardy in the post-fight scrum didn't seem as, not that he wasn't keen. He's like, look, if he wants that and he decides that this is the route he wants to take, we'll back him. But he wants to ensure that he's doing it at the right time. So like, he was kind of suggesting, maybe, like, if you look at a guy like Jacob Nadeau, where he went in and he won the European tournament, and then he went to the US tournament, and maybe he just wasn't ready just yet.
He got matched ridiculously hard as well.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, look, you can expect too, but I felt very bad for Ndo going in there against the 2 matchups that he had to face. Like, going in there and facing Impa Kasanganay and actually winning the first round. You know what I mean? You're going in and finishing last year, or going in and fighting last year's winner, and it's like, oh man, look, when you sign up for that kind of tournament, you're liable to face off those kind of opponents as well. But you know, I felt sorry for Jacob, but yeah, it could be, it's the reality of the situation when we're talking about Nathan as well. Is like, you want to make sure you don't want to just get there and be there. You want to make sure you're ready to be there and win and compete and have a chance of going for that $1 million too, I guess.
Yeah, and look, he is. Because I kind of asked him this because we talk glowingly about him, but we do talk about like Paul Hughes, Ian Garry, and I do think that Nathan Kelly deserves to be in that conversation now.
I do too. I spoke to him.
He's one of the best fighters in Ireland.
Yeah, I spoke to him about it before the fight as well, and saying that he was one of the most underrated, and you know, he wants to prove that by going into those big tournaments as well. And I think, you know, he'd be a welcome addition, but maybe, you know, if that isn't keen about, maybe and he kind of have mentioned it himself in the post-fight interview, maybe it is a step in to the European tournament first, get the job done there, and then look maybe at the 2026. He's only got 27 right now, so
yeah,
definitely on his side, Andy.
And he's not taking any damage really in his fight. So like, I look, if he wants the $1 million tournament, I would love to see him in there. I'd absolutely love to. If it's not that, it's got to be the PFL Europe tournament for me, because I think that he needs something to validate. He needs to be fighting for some sort of title, or like, you know, going towards some sort of title. So if you're in the $1 million tournament, you'd be fighting the biggest names that they have in their promotion. If not, let's see him in we're going to see him Q1, Q2, Q3, and then fighting for a belt. And I think from there, then it's like, right, now we know he's the best in Europe, and let's send him on to the US. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So would I. And yeah, the future is bright if your name is Kelly. Speaking of the Kellys, Nate the Great Kelly picked up. My segues are fucking on point today, boys. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it just all clicks. Nate the Great Kelly opened up the night, taking on Team Milo's Paul Nolan in an amateur fight. Another solid performance from Nate the Great here, Caoilte. I mean, you know, it was a step up in competition with Paul. The fight on the night was relatively one-sided, unfortunately. It was you know, a brief striking exchange. Paul Nolan initiated the takedown, and it was Nate the Great that locked in the armbar relatively quickly after that too. Another excellent performance from the SBG man. Yeah,
probably best performance today against the best opposition he's had in the PFL, just to highlight that. Obviously, I think he's had very tough competition outside of the PFL, or PFL, but he's that was a very, very solid performance from him. Quick, he's calling for the 4-ounce gloves now. So it's I know he spoke to Andy after. It's interesting to see what happens next and what direction they want to push him in. But if he wants the 4-ounce gloves, and that's the route he's going down, it'd be interesting to see how that starts playing out under the PFL banner.
Yeah, that was kind of what he was alluding to mostly after the fight, straight away after he got the finish to the camera in the cage. He was shouting that he wanted the opportunity to fight in the 4-ounce gloves. I know, Andy, and I agree with you too. I think if it's not the 4-ounce gloves, it's you got to be looking at, you know, a further step up for him in the likes of maybe a Shea Cleland rematch, Damien McGregor rematch at amateur. He doesn't seem to want to go down that route as of yet. More looking at turning pro. What do you feel about next steps for Nate the Great Kelly?
I think he's got options. I definitely think he has options. If he look, he's as he said, he's going to go and have a conversation with John and the rest of his coaches, because ultimately, like, he was like, what I think doesn't really matter because I don't really get a say. My coaches will decide. I personally think it's too soon. I think I would like to see Nate stay. I just don't think there's any rush. Like, I think he's only 19. He's only had 6 fights as an amateur. Now I know he's got a wealth of experience in combat prior to that, and obviously he's going in there and putting on these spectacular performances. But if he goes pro, fair enough. No, wouldn't object to it. But I do think that maybe a little bit more experience, maybe even just, you know, a couple more fights, and then look to go pro, because he's going in here and he's just dismantling lads very, very quickly. And I think that the experience that you would gain by having a few more fights, and, you know, let's say if it's Shea Cleland, if it's a Damien McGregor, great. Obviously, we would love to see that from an Irish perspective. It would be great to see more fighters from more gyms on that. They obviously would love that, and they've paid their dues, and they deserve, you know, to get these type of opportunities. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. I just don't think it's going to happen. But I would like to see, you know, again, another step up in competition, because he's ready. He's shown he's going in there against these guys. Nolan was a relative step up in competition, but he's clearly levels above going in against a guy like that. So I'd like to see him in there, get a bit more experience, and then look to go pro. But again, that's just my personal opinion. Completely appreciate and understand if he does decide to make the switch to 4-ounce gloves now. But I'd like to see him maybe stay just for a little bit longer at amateur, and gain a bit more experience.
Yeah, I can't argue with that opinion at all, really. But like you said, he has options, and the options are good to have if you're a fighter. So it'll be interesting to see what decision. Obviously, Nate the Great, he said he was going to go back and speak to his coaches and come up with the next plan for the next fight too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe we'll see him on that London card. I think maybe what you said, Andy, if you round off at least this year, maybe with a couple of more amateur fights, perhaps, yeah, that might be, you know, the best route for him. And then with a look to go in, 19 years of age, there's plenty of time to make that jump across.
And he looked great. Like, he looked great.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Like, and we're getting, like, it's difficult, right? Because you want to go there and you want to get tested, but when you're getting tested, you're taking damage too at the same time. Let's be real, you know. So is it a thing where, you know, could he be getting paid more money if he was to turn pro and get those tests with some maybe, you know, prospects coming up in the professional ranks? I mean, if you're turning pro, it all depends on the matchmaking, like, and even with amateur as well, it all depends on the matchmaking and what tests that you want to give yourself. So you know, at the early stages of your career, it's really, you know, you really have to balance the risk reward when it comes to this, because at the end of the day, we're in there, we're taking shots, we're getting hurt, and things can change in an instant too. So that's kind of labeled in, you know, every fighter situation, really, more so than labeling Nate the Great. But to have options, and that's what he does, is a good thing. Let's talk Conor. Obviously, we have Ian Garry's fight. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk Conor McGregor. Andy, obviously, you spoke with him last night. We were kind of, what can we say? Walking on eggshells, careful what we were speculating on and stuff like that. But, you know, the news is out now. It was a broken left toe, pinky toe on his foot that put him out of the fight. He told you in the interview, Andy, it happened 3 weeks to the day. So it happened about Saturday, 3 weeks ago, the day before the press conference. The reason the press conference was cancelled, obviously, because, you know, that injury had taken place. Didn't want to appear hurt at the press conference. You know, when we hear all of this stuff coming out now, it starts making a hell of a lot more sense with Conor. Just an unfortunate situation, very bad timing. The naysayers are always going to talk shit, but we cannot be critical at all of him pulling out of this fight. Maybe I'll go to Caoilte first, and then I'll hear your opinion on the matter at all. But your opinion, Caoilte, on the pullout. I mean, you know, for a guy like Conor who has gone in there time and time again with injuries and took that chance, I think it's fair for him not to have to take that chance this time around. Would you agree?
I would, yeah. Like, we saw what happened before. Do you know, he's come out with even worse than what he went in with before. So it makes complete sense. It's one of the biggest comebacks in combat sports. Probably, you know, you could argue the biggest comeback in combat sports. So why go into it with any injury whatsoever when you could reschedule it and be fully healthy? There's a lot on the line here. We got to keep in mind. So I think it's completely understandable, and there'll be a lot of people annoyed. Whatever, everyone has their own opinion, but I do think it's completely fair. And from a fan's perspective, if I want to see the best fight possible from these two, it would be if they're both fully healthy and uninjured and able to go. And I think, look, best case scenario in that. Yeah, look, I think there'll be a lot of criticism or whatever, and there already has been, but is what it is. I did find at one point I did find funny about it all is RDA taking a little shot. He had that in his back pocket for years.
He did.
And I respect the shit out of him for bringing it up, because it just adds another one to the list that we can end up seeing in future. But look, yeah, besides that, anyway, fair enough.
We spoke about all the naysayers and all the opinions online, and a big opinion coming out of this injury was Conor McGregor. He's never going to fight again. He's never going to get back in there. You stood beside the man last night and he told you he was going to be fighting again. Did you get that vibe? Did you feel that hunger? Did you feel that motivation from him? Like I felt it through the screen watching the interview, and I'm sure you could feel it even more so standing right next to him asking the questions.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't think there's no doubt in my mind he wants to fight again. Absolutely. Now, what I did get out of it was that one, he's saying that he can't even get his foot into a shoe still. So clearly the injury is persisting, or at least this Brazilian butt lift. Sorry, the Botox or whatever. I'm not too good at these injectables, but
oh my god.
But whatever the stem cell, to be clear, the stem cell treatment that he's got in his toe. So it was kind of confusing. He was saying he's like, I don't know if it's this that's making my toe kind of swollen and my foot swollen, or if it's the actual injury still. So he seemed confused on that. But regardless, it's going to be very interesting to see. He talked about August, and then he kind of said September. So I think they're probably still in a little bit of a limbo state to see when will he be definitely ready to go again. And the vibe that he was exuding was that, look, he's already cancelled this one for good reason, for an injury. He's not going to step back in there until he's good and ready. So where that will get very, very tricky, I think, is you have Conor's timeline, his injury timeline, when he wants to get in there, his team, and then you have the UFC. And now we get into a game of politics all over again, because there's going to be scheduling issues. There's going to be, right, well, what do we have lined up? The Sphere event, Dana seems to be poo-pooing it. I saw a headline. I didn't actually get to see a video or anything coming out, where I assume someone posed a question to Dana around Conor saying about his proposed return, and Dana saying he won't be ready.
Yeah, Dana, I listened to that segment. It was after the press conference in Saudi, after the event in Saudi at his press conference, just completely poured cold water over anything Conor McGregor related. He said, I'm not making any decisions, or I'm not talking about Conor McGregor until I know that he's recovered from his injury. So, I agree. I think the card it needs to happen on, and it should happen on, is that Sphere card. It's a fucking massive card. It makes sense to throw your biggest star in there. I don't know whether the UFC want that. Dana White was kind of, like you said, Andy, portraying that he doesn't really want that as well. So do they create an event for him? I've been looking at dates. I think the 21st of July was open up in the T-Mobile Arena. That's going to be too soon, I'd say. There might be a date there at the end of August. There's nothing saying that the UFC could just create a new pay-per-view here.
They would move mountains for that, man.
Yeah, they've got, for the money that's involved in it, they've got to. But it'll be very interesting. Although I do fear, Andy, we're going to go down the road that you said into this politics and saying I'm ready this time, but the UFC aren't ready. And then, are the UFC ready and Conor's not going to be ready? What I want to happen is the Sphere show. What I expect to happen is probably a December or January date, if we're being honest. And I don't know whether Conor is going to want that at all. Would they move him to the proposed the proposed show in Madison Square Garden. I mean, John Jones is rumored to be headlining that against Stipe Miocic. He doesn't really need a Conor McGregor fight on that either. So I mean, we're getting into, it's just like a never-ending kind of facade here.
Yeah, it's just a saga, isn't it? It's where like you finally had everyone playing ball and it working together towards a date, and then unfortunately an injury occurs, and now it just potentially we could be absolutely fine. They could be like, you know what, we'll stick you in the Sphere. You know what, we'll create a date for you. But history shows us that these things are a lot more complicated than that, and it can get drawn out a long while. So I hope that's not the case. And then when you consider that, it starts becoming, you know, you have a you know, to whatever extent a motivated or whatever you want to call it, like a Conor McGregor who's shown up to, you know, he's not in the Black Forge last night. He's shown up to the 3 Arena. He's still in the MMA mode.
Yeah, he looked in phenomenal shape to me. I think, you know, looking at him going out there, putting himself out there, obviously he wanted to corner Sinead, and that was likely in the works, but, you know, making himself available for interviews, putting himself out there. I think, to me, it was kind of, you know, he did it somewhat purposely to kind of nullify all the naysayers and all the rumors that were circulating around what was going on. Some ridiculous things being said as well. Like, he looked in pretty damn good shape. How did he look to you, Andy?
Oh yeah, I mean, he looks in great shape. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he never really doesn't, though, to be fair. He never really doesn't look in great shape, but like, yeah, my worry is just like they get into this like whole kind of bullshit again, where like, you know, he's come out himself and said this before, where when you're in the negotiation stage of getting that date and you're gearing towards it, you start doing a camp and then you start pulling away because all of a sudden it's not there and the motivation goes, and it's hard to keep that. So you need to get that date locked in. Obviously, of course, after you have a defined, clear timeline for his return from injury, but you need to get him locked in for that date because you need to keep him focused on fighting and not on everything else. But I thought he looked in great shape. Yeah, I think he seemed, anyway, all systems go and just kind of itching to get back in there. You know, you can tell even when he's watching the fights, he's, you know, I saw a lot of people on just bullshit YouTube comments, all this stuff. It's like, oh, he looks like this or that or whatever. And like, he's not even looking at your man or whatever. And it's like, well, there's a TV right beside you there where Paul Hughes is fighting. So that's what he's looking at, because he's reacting to, you know, to this as it's going on. But yeah, it was a mad old time.
Yeah, you did a great job on the interview anyway, and fair play to you. I'm absolutely delighted that you got the opportunity. You've been putting in Trojan work there and much deserved. So, you know, getting the big interviews, fair play to you, Andy. I'll finish off, Caoilte, and I'll ask you this question. Does Conor McGregor fight this year, yes or no? I
believe so, yes. And if I'm going to pick anywhere, you know, as you mentioned, the Spear, for some reason in my head, there was talks of obviously Saudi yesterday, and he wants I can't remember his name, is it Turkey? He wants the next event to have 30,000 people. And we've all seen the money that Saudi Arabia has. So if that would be on the cards as well, it could be one to build up a lot of revenue for the UFC. So that could potentially play a card there too. But
what I would have to do though in that Saudi fight, I mean, this is the importance of Vegas, and you know, the money that Conor McGregor generates for a fight in Vegas when you have people coming in and, you know, buying tickets, gambling, all of that. It is pretty big deal. Plus, you've got pay-per-view that you can be running out. If you do in Saudi Arabia, and number one, you lose probably. You probably make it in the live gate, maybe. All right, you lose it in, you know, what revenue can be brought to an area. Like, I mean, I think everybody wants Conor McGregor to be fighting in Las Vegas. And number three, pay-per-view. If you have it in Saudi Arabia, you're going to be having it at an off-kiltered pay-per-view kind of a time. I mean, yesterday it was on at 10 o'clock and started at 10 o'clock in the morning. Main event kicked off at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Saudi Arabia, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So those are all the big factors and things that, you know, prove stumbling blocks when we're talking about matching Conor McGregor up for a fight here, whereas the scheduling gets a little bit more tighter than it would be maybe for a normal fighter. But maybe to piggyback off what Andy said, maybe to round off this conversation before we go to Ian Garry, you know, a lapse in concentration is what Conor McGregor said caused this. So maybe this was a sign from the MMA gods that, you know, a new level of refocus needs to be kind of situated into Conor McGregor's camp on the build up to these kind of fights. You know, he kind of is talking that that's what he wants to do. He wants to tighten things up and avoid things like this happening again. And I hope that he, you know, he uses this kind of blipping the radar really to kind of refocus himself, get himself back right, because, you know, on the build up to this fight, was he fighting? Wasn't he fighting? If he had a fought, he wouldn't have fought at 100%. And I think, you know, I want to see him going in there at as close to 100% as Conor McGregor can get to right now and give a fair account of himself. So I'm glad that he's in that mindset. He doesn't know the fans or anything, anything, in my opinion. He's put his body on the line for long enough at this stage now to warrant a pullout. So yeah, the naysayers, it's the cool thing sometimes is to shit on Conor McGregor, but I think all it was kind of legitimate reasons and understandable reasons why he pulled out with this one. But it does leave Ian Garry in the lurch. I mean, he is due to fight on that card.
I mean, look at that. Just to try to, I don't know how many transitions that was there.
Oh, come on.
He's 100% clip rate right now.
Gravy this morning, lads. MVP is Ian Garry's opponent. You know, it's disappointing, I would imagine, for Ian. Look, we would have liked to get the chance to speak with him. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We tried. We were unable to kind of make something happen, unfortunately. But, you know, that's, look, Ian is busy. We're busy. That's the way things go sometimes. I would have liked to kind of pick his brain a little bit. And he has spoke to other outlets as well about maybe some of the disappointment surrounding, you know, this was such a big opportunity for him to be on a Conor McGregor card. But nonetheless, the opportunity is still there. He still has to go out and perform. He has a tricky challenge, and I label it tricky challenge, a tricky but a very winnable challenge against MVP here, Caoilte. Do you believe that Ian Garry has the abilities to go in there and get the job done? And maybe I'll give you a second question as well. The ability to go in and get the job done, but is just getting the job done going to be good enough for Ian Garry this time? Does he have to go out and maybe make a statement? Maybe I'll ask that one to you too as well, Andy. But go ahead, Caoilte. What's your opinion on this fight?
Oh, that second one's tricky. Yeah, I think he's more than capable of getting it done. He's been progressively getting through much higher level opponents in the UFC. The progression and kind of the way they've matched him has been exceptional, really. It's kind of exactly how you build a prospect that you want to potentially fight for a title at some point in the future. But I think it's very winnable fight for him. Like, you got to keep in mind, MVP, he's 37. He's probably in the last few years of his career at this highest level. So I know he's coming off a big win over Kevin Holland. But just like, will we see Ian Garry hit a different height in this fight? Because he's not even in the peak of his career yet. So we could see a different level Ian Garry altogether here. And I think people might don't take that into consideration with how he's evolving with every fight. So I think he definitely has he's more than capable of getting it done. For getting a title shot, I don't think just a win would be enough. I think it would need to be a statement, like massive, put him out cold, knock him out, submit him, really make a statement, and then call for the shot. That's the only way I think a title shot come out of it. Otherwise, Colby Covington fight would be perfect. So yeah, a lot on the line, massive fight for him. Could alter his career significantly for the next 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah, very well said, Andy. How do you see this story heading into this fight with MVP?
The story, how do I see the story? I mean, look, it kind of centers around the fight. Like, there's a lot less. There was so much bullshit that came with Ian Garry fight weeks the last while, and all the internet speak, you know, the cook, all this kind of these terms that you could become familiar with as a result of basically Ian Garry versus the internet, or more so the internet versus Ian Garry. There's none of that this time, which I think is great. I think it's nice that we're going in here. And look, this is a very, very intriguing stylistic matchup. I don't know how this is going to play out. When this was first booked, my immediate reaction was, from a fan perspective, I don't know if this will be a great fight. Like, I think they're two great fighters, two very, very intriguing styles, but when paired together, this could end up being a bit of a tit for tat kind of fighting on the outside, counter striking, counter striker fighting a counter striker type of matchup. I think Ian has it in him to go out here and get the job done. I think that I agree with Caoilte definitely. If he doesn't get a finish here, I don't think he gets a title shot. But I also don't think he needs to get a title shot next. If I'm honest, I think that there are plenty of fights out there, and he is in no rush to get that belt just yet. Like he's talked, many times about this plan that he has in place. So I think if he can go out here and beat a guy like Michael Venom Page, who was only lost in MMA to, what was it, that split decision to Logan Storley most recently, and then there was a kind of, not freak, but like, he's getting up and he gets caught with a shot.
No, that was excellent. From
yeah, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not not a freak shot, but like, just, yeah, he got caught.
Well,
he got caught. Beautiful shot.
Well, no, the idea of the leg kick, and this kind of circles into perfectly how I'm going to talk about this fight, to be honest, because I think with that Douglas Lima fight, it set the blueprint on how to get at Michael Venom Page. Explosive, distance, striker, with a wide stance. So what do you need to do against a guy like that? You need to go out there and absolutely leather the calf off him. And that's what Douglas Lima tried to do. What does that do to Michael Venom Page? It makes him hesitate to kind of come into the pocket to get off if he strikes. It makes him, hesitant to kind of utilize that type of movement. He'll be thinking about that calf kick. That's going to open up shots to the head. It's going to nullify his movement, his spring action, how well he fights on his toes. You take away that lead calf kick, it can force you to switch stances. It can really take you off your game. People go out and fight MVP and they get hypnotized. He's like a snake charmer. You know what I mean? They're all of this movement, all of this in and out movement, all of his hand movement. He lulls fighters into his kind of pace and kind of charms them a little bit and then springs into action. And it's a classic point style that has worked so well for him, worked devastating. So he's an explosive guy. He's done some serious damage, MVP has, in the cage. But I think a lot of it comes from that movement. And you take away that movement with calf kicks. And we've seen Ian Garry do it exactly like he did with Neil Magny. And I expect the exact same kind of a game plan coming in here against a guy like MVP. I think, you don't want to get into that tit for tattle battle with MVP, because then you will lose. You fight on the outside, kick the calf off him, and then see what happens. Is a takedown going to be there? Because, we got to remember this is mixed martial arts, and I think Ian Garry will probably want to prove that he's a better striker on the feet. I would expect this fight to play out on the feet, but for sure Ian Garry does have some takedowns and some grappling in his kind of repertoire as well that he can bring out here. But I do think that there are ways for Ian Garry to kind of get the job done on the feet here, but he can't play with fire too much. He's coming off of a decision win over Jeff Neal. Will he want to do that? Like, he's kind of been labeled as a guy who's going to decisions now, and I don't think he's going to enjoy that too much. But at the same time, if you overexert yourself against a guy like MVP, that's where you could get caught yourself. So, I mean, I'm very intrigued to see how he handles this fight as well.
That's a great breakdown you just gave there, and correct me if I'm wrong as well, but like, let's say he goes in there and does do that, he breaks him down with the calf kicks or the leg kicks. That then allows him to step into his boxing range, right? And we've seen 100%. Him being so successful with his jab in the UFC. Like, his jab is like, it's a piston, and the range that he can fight in his boxing range is very unique, I think, for when he's going against a lot of the guys because of his frame. And I don't think Ian's ever fought a guy like MVP, but I also don't think MVP's ever fought a guy like Ian Garry.
And MVP relies a lot on his speed in there, but Ian Garry is going to be able to match him in the speed, and that jab is still going to be important, even if you're going to be trying to target that calf kick, because the jab will be your range finder, and obviously you don't have to be within punching range to land that calf kick as well. So, yeah, I truly believe, I truly believe, like, it's all speculative really, to be honest, but like, I tried to put my mindset into Ian's mindset and saying, what way can we get at this guy and what way can we nullify his attacks? You you chop him down, you go at the trunk, you get those calf kicks, you force him to switch stances, then you fucking beat up that other calf kick. And when you take away MVP's legs, he'll start to become vulnerable in other areas of the body as well. So I'm very excited to see if that happens. It's a big fight. You know, MVP is a big name. I think Ian will have better tests inside the UFC. I think, you know, it's been unfortunate how this is kind of lined up for him. I think in reality, I know, and Ian would never say this, but he probably didn't want to be fighting a guy like MVP, and he probably didn't want to be fighting on a guy like MVP on a card that Conor McGregor wasn't on either. But alas, we're here, and he's got to get the job done, and it's going to set up some bigger fights for him. I think even if he goes out there and gets a finish, it's still not going to be enough for a title shot in the UFC's eyes. I think there's going to be another big fight next for him. But like Andy said, you know, he's not in a big rush either at the same time. So exciting times. I'm really buzzing for that fight.
Yeah, and he's also not in it, like, from what we can see from the outside looking in, without chatting to him, he doesn't appear to be in a position of power with the UFC right now. So, you know, he wasn't, at least to our knowledge, slated for that press conference in Ireland, which was mind-boggling. Going in here, to your point where you're saying, you know, he won't say this, but he basically did say this. He was going out of his way to not fight Michael Venom Page. You know, everything that he kind of put out there was saying, nah, zero interest in this. And then all of a sudden you're backed into a corner, you need a fight.
And you know what, when you're going out and speaking like that, like, he was kind of disregarding MVP skills as well. So like, when you're going out and being that vocal, even if MVP, you know, and this is a very strong reality too, if he goes out there and fights a very close, boring fight with MVP after shitting all over him in these last couple of fights, well, you know, what are the MMA fans going to say? Well, they're going to say, well, you were shitting all over him and you couldn't even finish him, or you couldn't even get a win, or you fought a really close fight against him. So, I mean, yeah, you always have to be super, super careful about what you're saying in these kind of situations, because you never know what's going to fall on your lap at the end of the day. So, interesting times. I'm excited though. Always excited to see Ian in action. And this is a good fight, a good test for him. It opens the card on it as well. So we want, you know, it's going to be a relatively early night for anyone who is wanting to stay up and watch that card in its totality. We do also have some action at home in Premier MMA on the same day on January 29th, Caoilte. You have the card up there, a decent card, outdoor event. They're going to be praying to the weather gods. They might have to... what was it? Who's the
fucking Child of Prague out?
Child of Prague is going to have to come out. I couldn't think of the name. Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Another big night of MMA in Kilkenny on June 29th. Caoilte, looking at the card, anything stick out to you on the card? Obviously, it's taking place in the Coliseum in Ballykeefe Amphitheatre in Kilkenny, and lots of good fights on the card too.
It's a solid card, isn't it? I love the fact they've got a pro fight headlining the card. You know, Jan Masek making his debut. He's been flown in to fight Alexander Yankov, who is no stranger to tough fights on the regional scene. He's one of those guys. He doesn't mind. He'll go in with anyone, and I love that about him. He's always exciting. So that main event's brilliant. The light heavyweight title fight between Sam Driver and Matty O'Rourke is an absolute cracker. Matty O'Rourke's been on a tear recently. I've really enjoyed some of his fights, and he gets to fight in front of Kilkenny crowd. You know, Ian, you know plenty what that's like and the pop they can give. So I imagine it'll be quite the experience for him. But Sam Driver is no joke. So I really like that.
I love his nickname, the Hound. It's a great nickname, ain't it?
I'm assuming you'll be cage side, Ian, you're getting inducted to the Kilkenny Hall of Fame.
I don't know about that, lads. Jeez,
video package is getting rolled out.
I would have loved it. I was like talking to Niall about this one. I was like, Jesus, if it happened in July, I'd love to be there now. So but it'll be a great night now. But it's a long way from being inducted into any kind of the Hall of Shame now, more so than the Hall of Fame, I'd say, for me.
You know, there's a load of Brennans on this card from Milo Martial Arts. Any relations or anything, or any related to
none at all? I'm related to Mick Brennan. Me and Mick are first cousins. So, but no, none, no family members on this card. Sadly, you know,
maybe none that you know of, anyway.
Yeah, none that we know.
The milkman may have been around. You never know.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, it's a couple of hairy nights in Kilkenny some nights, boys. But yeah, no, I think no relations. A couple of decent. Look, it's great to see what you want in a gym, and look what we took great pleasure in. Like, we came up where I was under Miles and we trained at Top Pro Kilkenny back in the day. And, we went and we fought in Wexford and we fought in Waterford. There's cards in Galway and Dublin. But getting a chance to fight in Kilkenny for me, I was lucky enough to headline a card in Kilkenny myself. And, that's headlining a card in your home city in front of your friends and your family. I didn't go on to achieve much great things when I was fighting, but I can always say that I did do that, and it meant a hell of a lot to me as well. And these fighters come up and coming here as well for coming out with Team Milo. You see Caoilte Baby Bash Brennan. Well, that Baby Bash Mick, we used to call Mick Brennan the Basher Brennan, Mick the Basher Brennan. So obviously Caoilte Brennan has got the nickname Baby Bash, and that's obviously something that Mick would have probably gave him himself, or Miles would have gave him. We have Joey Brennan as well. We have Liam Delaney coming out there from Milo, Sean Piggott, and obviously, as you said, Matthew O'Rourke as well, amongst a couple of others. They're going to get a fantastic opportunity to fight on a card in Kilkenny, in front of their friends and family and represent Team Milo. So all the credit to them. And the same as all the other fighters. You got SBG Ireland guys there. You got Premier Martial Arts, No Fear MMA, MMA Cork having the chance. Having these cards on is important for regional mixed martial arts, especially down in the southeast and the southwest. We need to have more of these cards. So, I want to give Niall Sunderland maximum credit for putting these cards together, for giving these guys the opportunity to go out there and compete in front of, friends and family and represent their gyms as well. And I hope that he's able to do more of it throughout this year, next year. And I hope we see other organizations pop up as well and help out the scene as well, because cards like this help fighters grow, build a buzz for the sport of mixed martial arts, and overall will benefit, in Irish mixed martial arts overall. So hopefully we get to see a hell of a lot more of it down the line as well.
That's a great point though, Ian, because I realize I joke on here anytime we've got someone not from Dublin on, fucking calling us cultures and all that stuff, and I'm a big filthy fucking Jack Ian, but it's important for the health of MMA in Ireland to have shows around the country, because it's all it's Dublin based. You've got Oran in Newry, and then the rest are up north for the most part. So now, to be fair, there was was it Elite Fighting Championships down in Cork?
That's right.
That was on.
They have another one coming up now as well. So it's brilliant to see.
So we want to see more shows throughout the country, and it's been very, very difficult over the past decade now, almost, in the Republic to see shows taking place. So the more the merrier. It's brilliant for Irish MMA. It's brilliant for the growth and the health of Irish MMA as a whole, to give not just Dublin based fighters or having to drag people up to Dublin to fight on shows. So yeah, brilliant stuff. Also, just before we move on for this, can I highlight two more fights or fighters?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to do
Bruce George is fighting on this card. And my God, he is one of my favorite fighters to watch right now. Just a phenomenal grappler. I think he's every single fight he's had has been a submission victory so far. Really excited to see him. And then there's a brilliant fight between Jordan Scully and Michael Conricht. Michael Connolly from fighting out of Conricht. Really looking forward to that one. Jordan Scully's been on an absolute tear after dropping a few. He switched over to SBG Nace, and he's been on a tear again since then. So always enjoy a Jordan Scully fight.
Yeah, I just want to actually mention a grappling fight our grappling contest that's going on there. I want to give a shout out to Ryan Mangan from Milo Martial Arts. He's a phenomenal grappler. He's been competing at worlds and European levels and picking up all kinds of accolades. And obviously it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I wanted to give him a shout out because he's a phenomenal grappler and very exciting to watch as well. So definitely get there early if you want to see some grappling action, and definitely check out Ryan Mangan as well. He takes on Josh Scully in a sub-only grappling match.
Was he, I could be getting confused, was he the first Irish man to win IBJJF gold? Was that it? Or am I getting confused here?
I can't say that for sure, but he has been definitely making waves and picking up goals in the worlds and European some level of competition now. But yeah, I don't want to say yes.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I've thrown a spanner in the works here. I'll consult our resident BJJ affiliate and alumni of SevereMMA, Andrew McGann, for
yeah, Andrew definitely know that as well. But yeah, I just wanted to give him a shout out as well. He's been like in the gym helping out coaching in Milo martial arts as well. So you know, he's a very exciting grappler, and definitely tune in. And I'm really looking forward to a lovely warm up to the UFC 303 card for me. I'll be tuning in to that one on June 29th, and I'll be rubbing the shite out of the Child of Prague to hope that there's no rain.
Sorry, you'll be rubbing the shite out of what?
That's what
okay. The
Child of Prague.
I said something different there, man.
The dirty devil, Andy Stevenson. We also have a virtual. I know, right? So I did. No, not even gonna go there. I was gonna go there. I'm not even gonna go there.
Oh God.
We have to finish this off, Caoilte. We have a Virtus card that's also going down next weekend too. Take us through some of the best of the action that we can expect to see on that card too.
Yeah, look, the main event is between Jake Gilpin and Dee Maguire. Brilliant fight. It's at a catchweight, so I think they're doing the same day weigh-ins over there, which. It's quite difficult to get fighters in the card when you're doing that, but they've put together a good show. Oma, that like it's a good trek out, but the lads over there, they always manage to do a decent job. But yeah, Dee Maguire, Jake Gilpin, great to fight at the top of the card. I think they were trying to get pro fights on the card, but were unsuccessful. Dennis Frimpong, however, it does feature in a grappling fight against Conor Marron, so bit of a Kim kind of left the field. I know Dennis has been looking for fights outside of Octagon, so I guess they were trying to find him someone, but never happened. So we get to see him in a grappling fight. Nice little addition to the card. A lot of guys then who kind of, I guess, early career. Cesar Correa and Adrian Barrow is another good fight further down the card. And one that I really, really like is that fight between Dino Driscoll and Sean Kelly. I'm not sure if you remember, but Dino Driscoll, when he first started, I remember he came on scene. He had two massive wins, one in Cage Conflict and one in Orr. He went on to fight Senan Coakley, which was a great fight, and then he got a tough card in Dara Ward as well. So this is a comeback fight against after 2 losses, and he hasn't fought since was it June of last year? So like a year out, almost a year to the day, and he's up against Sean Kelly. So that's a absolutely brilliant fight. Sean Kelly now he's 3-6, trade of wins and losses, but he's no joke. He's gone against some tough guys, Blaine McGill, Brian Manning, Jess Paulo. So he's had some tough rounds, and that's going to be a very, very good fight as well for me, for the ones to highlight anyway. But fair play to lads in Oma. You know, they always put on a good card. And
solid.
Good to see them outside of Dublin and Belfast once again.
That's it. Exactly, keep it out of the Keep it out of the big smoke. The fuck.
Hope the cultures.
Wrapping it up for the episode this week, I'll just get a little bit of tidbits on the Ultimate Fighter. Obviously, Paddy McCurry, Omran Shaban in the Ultimate Fighter house. Omran obviously was scheduled to fight on episode 2. Cold sore kept him out of action. In episode 3, his fight has been confirmed to take place this week. So, you know, it would be probably out at the time this podcast is released already. So you can check it out. Obviously, you know, we're recording this a little bit earlier than the release of episode 4. Yeah, we'll discuss that in great detail on the next episode of the Auld Triangle. If you can't wait that long, me and Theo do an episode recap after each episode of the Ultimate Fighter on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. You can go over there and check that out as well. I gotta say, lads, it's been, I don't know whether it's because I've put a little bit more effort in kind of, you know, looking at the background of these fighters, and obviously with Omran and Paddy and the Cage Warriors fighters in there as well. But I'm pretty invested into this season, and the episode.
You're back in. You're back into tough.
I tried to get away, but they fucking keep pulling me back in. That's it, the Ultimate Fighter. But getting to see Omran in there next week against Magomedov is going to be look at Omran coming in on a 5-fight win streak. His opponent coming in on a 6-fight win streak. I'm very, very excited to see that fight go down. We'll break it down next episode of the Auld Triangle. Obviously, Ian Garry's fight as well, and any other action. Obviously, we'll take a closer look at the Premier Virtus cards on the next episode as well. Next episode could be my last episode as a bachelor, lads. I could be married. I could be a married man from there on in after that. So I think that's the way it's lining up anyway. I'm not too sure. Maybe not. No, we're a bit early. I might have 2 left in me before I get.
Two left. We have the one in Dublin first, I think.
We'll have to have the old triangle stag party or something on here. But there's only one thing left for us to do, and that's for Caoilte de Barra to see us out.
Garmy and Mahagwif, Agus Langafod.